Bipartisan bill seeks warrants for police use of stingray cell trackers. Senator Ron Wyden, DR. Speaks during a Senate Finance Committee hearing on January 19, 2017. Photo, Mark Wilson, Getty Images. A bipartisan group of House and Senate lawmakers introduced legislation Wednesday requiring police agencies to get a search warrant before they can deploy powerful cell phone surveillance technology known as stingrays that sweep up information about the movements of innocent Americans while tracking suspected criminals. Owning a smartphone or fitness tracker shouldn't give the government a blank check to track your movements, said Senator Ron Wyden, DR. A member of the Senate Intelligence Committee who introduced the bill with Reps. Jason Chaffetz, R. Utah, and John Conyers, D. Mitch. Law enforcement should be able to use GPS data, but they need to get a warrant. This bill sets out clear rules to make sure our laws keep up with the times. Stingrays are suitcase-sized devices that can pinpoint a cell phone's location within a few yards by essentially masquerading as a cell tower. While they can help police track suspected criminals, the devices also intercept information from the cell phones of innocent people who just happen to be nearby. Dozens of police departments throughout the U.S. use the devices, often concealing that fact from suspects and their lawyers during court proceedings. Courts have issued conflicting opinions about whether government agents need a warrant to track Americans through their cell phones and other GPS devices. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously in 2012 that police must obtain a warrant before attaching a GPS tracking device to a suspect's vehicle. However, the court did not say whether a warrant is required to track people through their cell phones, the OnStar systems in their vehicles, or other electronic devices such as fitness bracelets. Congress has an obligation to act quickly to protect Americans from violations of their privacy made possible by emerging technologies, said Chaffetz, chairman of the House Oversight and Government Affairs Committee. As we welcome innovative technologies that help fight crime, we must be mindful of the potential for abuse. Read more. Federal agents will no longer use stingray cell phone trackers without warrants. U.S. Marshals secretly track 6,000 cell phones. IRS use of stingray devices to track cell phones sparks Senate inquiry. The legislation introduced Wednesday, called the Geolocation Privacy and Surveillance (GPS) Act, would require a warrant for all domestic law enforcement agencies to track the location and movements of individual Americans through GPS technology without their knowledge. It also aims to combat high-tech stalking by creating criminal penalties for secretly using an electronic device to track someone's movements. When individuals are tracked in this way, the government is able to generate a profile of a person's public movements that includes details about a person's familial, political, professional, religious, and other intimate associations, Conyers said. The bill is supported by major privacy and civil liberties groups. In today's world, most Americans use cell phones or other electronic devices that are capable of tracking their every move, including visits to a mosque, doctor's office, domestic violence shelter, or political rally, said Nima Singhaliani, legislative counsel at the American Civil Liberties Union. This is information that the government should not be able to get without a warrant, yet law enforcement routinely fails to meet this standard. Congress should swiftly pass the GPS Act to protect this sensitive information. FBI Director James Comey has said that law enforcement's use of stingrays is crucial to tracking and capturing criminals. The Justice Department said in 2015 that it changed its policy to require federal agents to obtain warrants before deploying the devices. However, many local and state police agencies continue to use stingrays without warrants. It's how we find killers, it's how we find kidnappers, it's how we find drug dealers, it's how we find missing children, it's how we find pedophiles, Comey said in 2014 in a rare public statement about the FBI's use of the surveillance technology. It's work you want us to be able to do.
You know that dot on your cell phone's GPS app? That's your location, and it goes where you go. And while we may have all accepted the fact that Google knows our every move, the NYPD now acknowledges the fact that following a records request from the New York Civil Liberties Union, that it has indeed, since 2008, been able to keep tabs on your calls and location with something called a stingray.
If it's protect the people, I guess it's okay.
The NYPD says they do not use it to just arbitrarily follow people. They use it to when someone is in danger.
I don't know, it's bullshit to me.
The Harris Corporation makes the Stingray device. The company would not comment to Pix 11 about the technology, but Popular Science Associate Editor Matt Giles explains what it does.
Basically, what the Stingray does is it mimics a cell phone tower. So when you make a phone call, your signal goes out to a cell phone tower, pings back to your phone. What the Stingray does is it spoofs the tower, and so then it's able to track your individual cell phone. And so it's monitoring your cell phone, it's monitoring everyone's cell phone that you're in communication with.
I'm getting high frequency clutter here. We lost tracers 1, 2, and 6. Their signals are completely dead. Something is wrong here.
Now, before you go thinking this is earth-shattering news, if you really think about it, this kind of technology was actually developed ages ago for the military and popularized in films like the 1998 Will Smith, Gene Hackman hit Enemy of the State.
What the hell is happening? I blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call!
NYCLU Senior Staff Attorney Mariko Hiros.
How has the department been using this technology?
So it's used stingrays over 1,000 times since 2008, which is quite incredible because this is the first time this information is becoming public and we're talking about that. This technology was developed for military use. Now it's migrated into civilian use, and we have to have a discussion about what does that mean.
The NYPD responded with a forceful statement defending its use of Stingray technology. Quote, "In rare instances, the NYPD may use this technology in emergency situations while we seek judicial approval. This would be in instances where the life or safety of someone is at risk." The department adds, the NYCLU maligned that privacy of New Yorkers is at risk. It is not. What is at risk is the safety of New Yorkers, without the limited use of this technology to locate dangerous fugitives.
Again, it's important to note the NYPD says it only uses Stingray cell phone tracking technology when it has the permission from a judge.
Stingray Phone Tracker. The Stingray is an IMSI catcher, a controversial cellular phone surveillance device, manufactured by Harris Corporation to initially developed for the military and intelligence community. The Stingray and similar Harris devices are in widespread use by local and state law enforcement agencies across the United States. 3, 4 and possibly covertly in the United Kingdom. 5 Citation needed. Stingray has also become a generic name to describe these kinds of devices. 6. The Stingray is an IMSI catcher with both passive, digital analyzer, and active, cell site simulator, capabilities. When operating in active mode, the device mimics a wireless carrier cell tower in order to force all nearby mobile phones and other cellular data devices to connect to it. 7, 8, 9. The Stingray family of devices can be mounted in vehicles. 8 On airplanes, helicopters, and unmanned aerial vehicles. 10 Hand-carried versions are referred to under the trade name Kingfish. 11. Active mode operations. Edit. Extracting stored data such as international mobile subscriber identity, IMSI, numbers and electronic serial number, ESN, 12. Writing cellular protocol metadata to internal storage. Forcing an increase in signal transmission power. 13. Forcing an abundance of radio signals to be transmitted. Interception of communications content. Tracking and locating the cellular device user. 7. Conducting a denial of service attack. Encryption key extraction. 14. Radio jamming for either general denial of service purposes. 15 Or to aid in active mode protocol rollback attacks. Passive mode operations. Edit. Conducting base station surveys, which is the process of using over-the-air signals to identify legitimate cell sites and precisely map their coverage areas. Active, cell site simulator, capabilities edit. In active mode, the Stingray will force each compatible cellular device in a given area to disconnect from its service provider cell site, e.g., operated by Verizon, AT&T, etc., and establish a new connection with the Stingray 16 in most cases. This is accomplished by having the Stingray broadcast a pilot signal that is either stronger than, or made to appear stronger than, the pilot signals being broadcast by legitimate cell sites operating in the Area 17. A common function of all cellular communications protocols is to have the cellular device connect to the cell site offering the strongest signal. Stingrays exploit this function as a means to force temporary connections with cellular devices within a limited area. Extracting data from internal storage edit. During the process of forcing connections from all compatible cellular devices in a given area, the Stingray operator needs to determine which device is a desired surveillance target. This is accomplished by downloading the IMSI, ESN, or other identifying data from each of the devices connected to the Stingray 12. In this context, the IMSI or equivalent identifier is not obtained from the cellular service provider or from any other third party. The Stingray downloads this data directly from the device using radio waves. In some cases, the IMSI or equivalent identifier of a target device is known to the Stingray operator beforehand. When this is the case, the operator will download the IMSI or equivalent identifier from each device as it connects to the Stingray 18. When the downloaded IMSI matches the known IMSI of the desired target, the dragnet will end and the operator will proceed to conduct specific surveillance operations on just the target device 19. In other cases, the IMSI or equivalent identifier of a target is not known to the Stingray operator and the goal of the surveillance operation is to identify one or more cellular devices being used in a known area 20. For example, if visual surveillance is being conducted on a group of protesters 21, a Stingray can be used to download the IMSI or equivalent identifier from each phone within the protest area. After identifying the phones, locating and tracking operations can be conducted, and service providers can be forced to turn over account information identifying the phone users. Writing metadata to internal storage edit. Forcing an increase in signal transmission power edit. Cellular telephones are radio transmitters and receivers much like a walkie-talkie. However, the cell phone communicates only with a repeater inside a nearby cell tower installation. At that installation, the devices take in all cell calls in its geographic area and repeat them out to other cell installations which repeat the signals onward to their destination telephone, either by radio or landline wires. Radio is used also to transmit a caller's voice/data back to the receiver's cell telephone. The two-way duplex phone conversation then exists via these interconnections. To make all that work correctly, the system allows automatic increases and decreases in transmitter power, for the individual cell phone and for the tower repeater, too, so that only the minimum transmit power is used to complete and hold the call active, on, and allows the users to hear and be heard continuously during the conversation. The goal is to hold the call active but use the least amount of transmit power, mainly to conserve batteries and be efficient. The tower system will sense when a cell phone is not coming in clearly, and will order the cell phone to boost transmit power. The user has no control over this boosting, it may occur for a split second or for the whole conversation. If the user is in a remote location, the power boost may be continuous. In addition to carrying voice or data, the cell phone also transmits data about itself automatically, and that is boosted or not as the system detects need. Coding of all transmissions allows two nearby cell users no crosstalk or interference between the two. This coding is not encryption, which is another, different coding. The boosting of power, however, is limited by the design of the devices to a maximum setting. The standard systems are not high power and thus can be overpowered by secret systems using much more boosted power that can then take over a user's cell phone. If overpowered that way, a cell phone will not indicate the change due to the secret radio being programmed to hide itself from normal detection. The ordinary user cannot know if their cell phone is captured via overpower boosts or not. There are other ways of secret capture that need not overpower, too. Just as a person shouting drowns out someone whispering, the boost in RF watts of power into the cell telephone system can overtake and control that system in total or only a few, or even only one, conversation. This strategy requires only more RF power, and thus it is more simple than other types of secret control. Power boosting equipment can be installed anywhere there can be an antenna, including in a vehicle, perhaps even in a vehicle on the move. Once a secret boosted system takes control, any manipulation is possible, from simple recording of the voice or data to total blocking of all cell phones in the geographic area. Forcing an abundance of signal transmissions. Edit. Tracking and locating. Edit. A stingray can be used to identify and track a phone or other compatible cellular data device even while the device is not engaged in a call or accessing data services. Denial of service. Edit. The FBI has claimed that when used to identify, locate, or track a cellular device, the stingray does not collect communications content or forward it to the service provider. 22 Instead, the device causes a disruption in service. 23 Under this scenario, any attempt by the cellular device user to place a call or access data services will fail while the stingray is conducting its surveillance. Interception of communications content. Edit. By way of software upgrades 1424, the stingray and similar Harris products can be used to intercept GSM communications content transmitted over the air between a target cellular device and a legitimate service provider cell site. The stingray does this by way of the following man-in-the-middle attack. 1. Simulate a cell site and force a connection from the target device. 2. Download the target device's IMSI and other identifying information. 3. Conduct GSM active key extraction. 14. To obtain the target device's stored encryption key. 4. Use the downloaded identifying information to simulate the target device over the air. 5. While simulating the target device, establish a connection with a legitimate cell site. Authorized to provide service to the target device. 6. Use the encryption key to authenticate the stingray to the service provider as being the target device. And 7. Forward signals between the target device and the legitimate cell site while decrypting and recording communications content. The GSM active key extraction 14 performed by the stingray in Step 3 merits additional explanation. A GSM phone encrypts all communications content using an encryption key stored on its SIM card with a copy stored at the service provider. 25 While simulating the target device during the above explained man-in-the-middle attack, the service provider cell site will ask the stingray, which it believes to be the target device, to initiate encryption using the key stored on the target device. 26 Therefore, the stingray needs a method to obtain the target device's stored encryption key, else the man-in-the-middle attack will fail. GSM primarily encrypts communications content using the A5/1 call encryption cipher. In 2008 it was reported that a GSM phone's encryption key can be obtained using $1,000 worth of computer hardware and 30 minutes of cryptanalysis performed on signals encrypted using A5/127. However, GSM also supports an export weakened variant of A5/1 called A5/2. This weaker encryption cipher can be cracked in real time. 25 While A5/1 and A5/2 use different cipher strengths, they each use the same underlying encryption key stored on the SIM card. 26 Therefore, the stingray performs GSM active key extraction 14 during Step 3 of the man-in-the-middle attack as follows. 1. Instruct target device to use the weaker A5/2 encryption cipher. 2. Collect A5/2 encrypted signals from target device. And 3. Perform cryptanalysis of the A5/2 signals to quickly recover the underlying stored encryption key. 28 Once the encryption key is obtained, the stingray uses it to comply with the encryption request made to it by the service provider during the man-in-the-middle attack. 28. Passive capabilities. Edit. In passive mode, the stingray operates either as a digital analyzer, which receives and analyzes signals being transmitted by cellular devices and/or wireless carrier cell sites, or as a radio jamming device, which transmits signals that block communications between cellular devices and wireless carrier cell sites. By passive mode, it is meant that the stingray does not mimic a wireless carrier cell site or communicate directly with cellular devices. Base station, cell site, surveys edit. A stingray and a test phone can be used to conduct base station surveys, which is the process of collecting information on cell sites, including identification numbers, signal strength, and signal coverage areas. When conducting base station surveys, the stingray mimics a cell phone while passively collecting signals being transmitted by cell sites in the area of the stingray. Base station survey data can be used to further narrow the past locations of a cellular device if used in conjunction with historical cell site location information, HXLI, obtained from a wireless carrier. HXLI includes a list of all cell sites and sectors accessed by a cellular device, and the date and time each access was made. Law enforcement will often obtain HXLI from wireless carriers in order to determine where a particular cell phone was located in the past. Once this information is obtained, law enforcement will use a map of cell site locations to determine the past geographical locations of the cellular device. However, the signal coverage area of a given cell site may change according to the time of day, weather, and physical obstructions in relation to where a cellular device attempts to access service. The maps of cell site coverage areas used by law enforcement may also lack precision as a general matter. For these reasons, it is beneficial to use a stingray and a test phone to map out the precise coverage areas of all cell sites appearing in the HXLI records. This is typically done at the same time of day and under the same weather conditions that were in effect when the HXLI was logged. Using a stingray to conduct base station surveys in this manner allows for mapping out cell site coverage areas that more accurately match the coverage areas that were in effect when the cellular device was used. Usage by law enforcement. In the United States edit. Main article, Stingray use in United States law enforcement. The use of the devices has been frequently funded by grants from the Department of Homeland Security. 29 The Los Angeles Police Department used a Department of Homeland Security grant in 2006 to buy a stingray for regional terrorism investigations. However, according to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the LAPD has been using it for just about any investigation imaginable. 30. In addition to federal law enforcement, military, and intelligence agencies, stingrays have in recent years been purchased by local and state law enforcement agencies. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, 42 law enforcement agencies in 17 states own stingray technology. In November 2014, Slate reported that at least 46 state and local police departments, from Sunrise, Florida, to Hennepin County, Minnesota, use cell site simulators, with a price tag of $16,000 to more than $125,000 for each unit. 31 In 2015, it was reported that the Baltimore Police Department's frequency in using the device was inexplicably high. 32 In some states, the devices are made available to local police departments by state surveillance units. The federal government funds most of the purchases with anti-terror grants. In 2006, Harris employees directly conducted wireless surveillance using stingray units on behalf of the Palm Bay Police Department, where Harris has a campus. 33 In response to a bomb threat against a middle school, the search was conducted without a warrant or judicial oversight. 34, 35, 36, 37. Outside the United States edit. Police in Vancouver, BC, Canada admitted after much speculation across the country that they had made use of a stingray device. 38 Provided by the RCMP. They also stated that they intended to make use of such devices in the future. 2 days later, a statement by Edmonton's police force had been taken as confirming their use of the devices, but they said later that they did not mean to create what they called a miscommunication. 39. Privacy International and the Sunday Times reported on the usage of stingrays and IMSI catchers in Ireland, against the Irish Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission, GSOC, which is an oversight agency of the Irish police force Garda Síochána 4041. On June 10, 2015. The BBC reported on an investigation by Sky News 4243 about possible false mobile phone towers being used by the London Metropolitan Police. Commissioner Bernard Hogan Howe refused comment. Secrecy edit. The increasing use of the devices has largely been kept secret from the court system and the public. 32 In 2014, police in Florida revealed they had used such devices at least 200 additional times since 2010 without disclosing it to the courts or obtaining a warrant. The American Civil Liberties Union has filed multiple requests for the public records of Florida law enforcement agencies about their use of the cell phone tracking devices. 44. Local law enforcement and the federal government have resisted judicial requests for information about the use of stingrays, refusing to turn over information or heavily censoring it. 45 In June 2014, the American Civil Liberties Union published information from court regarding the extensive use of these devices by local Florida police. 46 After this publication, United States Marshals Service then seized the local police's surveillance records in a bid to keep them from coming out in court. 47. In some cases, police have refused to disclose information to the court, citing non-disclosure agreements signed with Harris Corporation. 45, 48, 49 The FBI defended these agreements, saying that information about the technology could allow adversaries to circumvent it. 48 The ACLU has said potentially unconstitutional government surveillance on this scale should not remain hidden from the public just because a private corporation desires secrecy. And it certainly should not be concealed from judges. 2. In 2015, Santa Clara County pulled out of contract negotiations with Harris for stingray units, citing onerous restrictions imposed by Harris on what could be released under public records requests as the reason for exiting negotiations. 50. Criticism edit. In recent years, legal scholars, public interest advocates, legislators, and several members of the judiciary have strongly criticized the use of this technology by law enforcement agencies. Critics have called the use of the devices by government agencies warrantless cell phone tracking, as they have frequently been used without informing the court system or obtaining a warrant. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has called the devices an unconstitutional, all-you-can-eat data buffet. 51. In June 2015, WNYC Public Radio published a podcast with Daniel Rigmaiden about the Stingray device. 52. In 2016, Professor Laura Moy of the Georgetown University Law Center filed a formal complaint to the FCC regarding the use of the devices by law enforcement agencies, taking the position that because the devices mimic the properties of cell phone towers, the agencies operating them are in violation of FCC regulation, as they lack the appropriate spectrum licenses. 53. Countermeasures edit. A number of countermeasures to the Stingray and other devices have been developed. For example, cryptophones such as GMSCase cryptophone have firewalls that can identify and thwart the Stingray's actions or alert the user to IMEI capture. 54. This can also be done with certain applications.